Daniel Pearl, who shot it, and Ted Nicolau, who did the sound, and myself. We all had a little production company that we'd started maybe a year before, to doing local TV commercials and industrials and that sort of thing. We had done a training film for the Texas Department of Public Safety. And the first part of the film, it basically was how, running a bust, how evidence has to be handled, and the whole thing. But the very first part of the film was like when the cops come crashing through the house. And Toby saw that at the film lab and was really taken with it, and especially with the cinematography. So he met with Daniel, and Daniel's working. Then he asked Daniel told him about me, because I'd done the editing as well as directed thing, and so we met. I don't remember much about our initial meetings. I think it was pretty much, okay, you're on, let's go do it. We all had sort of the same vision of that. It was a low-budget horror film that would probably play in a few drive-ins, and that, but it'd be fun to do. We were all, Toby and I were fond of horror movies, and Burns, of course, knew all the horror movies, and so it just looked like it was going to be a lark and be interesting. Of course, we were all very naive. None of us had ever worked on a real movie before. Burns, I met when we started the film, and I'm sure that's where I met the first time with Toby and Kim, was at Burns' studio, which was just great fun. I mean, it was like all sorts of fun stuff for a geek like myself. I mean, really, with props and things that he had made. And then Bob and I worked, we did Tourist Trap, we did Hills Have Eyes, and then he did production design and art direction on a couple of short things that I did. During production, it was a variety of things. I actually did some stunt driving, did some second AD work. I did, there was something, because I was in town and working when they were out shooting, and if something came up, then they needed to get it out there, I would also be the gopher. So I was thinking about the film that's really struck me more recently, and of course, having a lot more experience now. But we were really very, very lucky with that cast, and had no idea how lucky we were, because they were all really good, took it very seriously. They went beyond any reasonable lengths to get it done.
This heat is just driving me crazy. I don't know if I can take much more.
Oh God, it was hot. And I got up and opened the door, and it was like I opened a blast furnace. And this was like 7 o'clock in the morning. And I just closed the door and went back, lay down on the couch and turned up the air conditioning. I don't know how we did it. I do not know, because there was no air conditioning. We had an RV for the cast, and that may have had air conditioning of a sort, but I have no idea, because people were out there in the sun hour after hour after hour. And it was brutal, but we did it. We didn't really. It was funny at the time. It didn't seem to be that big a deal. I mean, looking back on it, it seems more horrendous than we felt. We had plenty of other stuff to worry about. Things were pretty hectic, and there was not really a script supervisor as such on the film. So it was kind of a chore trying to figure out what went where and what order and things. Fortunately, Ted took really, really great notes. And they were a lifesaver for me, because I made the first pass on the movie, and just getting everything together and figuring out what went where and when. Unfortunately, Ted also had a lot of editorial comments in his notes, which Toby didn't appreciate when he saw them. It went on much longer than planned, because the film went several weeks beyond just in that, which of course put the whole post-production schedule back. And getting it going, getting the momentum going, on the editing really took a long time. I remember like Toby was beat. I mean, he'd really been. I look back on it. I don't know why, how he survived it, because he was. It was there the whole time, and then he had to do stuff before and after shooting every day, and so he was really beat. So I think it took him a while just to get back into a work mode. Toby was a vampire. Toby got up at 6 o'clock in the evening and had breakfast, and then at midnight or so he had lunch, and then he had dinner like at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. And so I had to adjust my schedule to work with it. And we edited at his house, where his poor wife at the time was like, she had to do all the running around stuff during the day. Then at night, she had to make dinner and whatnot for Toby and I. So it was pretty crazed. There were things that were, as there are any time in the creative process, there's serendipity, and you discover things and find things. But I think Toby really had it down from the get-go, and he took, as a good filmmaker does, suggestions and incorporated them and changed things, and dealt with, they all became his. It's just part of that process. I started in the assembling it and got a first assembly, and then Toby came in and I worked with Toby, and then Sally came in to work with the two of us, and unfortunately I couldn't keep living on the chainsaw wages. I had to go make some real money, but everything in that film is Toby. I mean, there weren't any cuts made, and Sally and I made suggestions or had ideas and stuff, but it was Toby. It was really his vision, and I've often wondered if maybe he would have had a different career. Would have had a more interesting career in terms of films if he had not come to Hollywood. If he'd have kept making movies like that in a kind of guerrilla style, where there's a lot of energy and enthusiasm, but who knows? Yeah, Tourist Trap. The director we'd gone to film school at University of Texas together, David Schmoller, and I, and David had been out here for like a year or two, trying to knock around to get something going, and I moved out, and I actually stayed with my wife, and I stayed with David and his wife for a while until we found a place. And during this time, we began talking about doing a horror film, because I said, we could do a low-budget film. As I know enough people, I'm sure we can get it off the ground. I think very arrogantly and without really a hell of a lot of experience. Well, let's just make it ourselves. That was an amazing experience. I mean, it was tough doing it. There were all sorts of crazy things on Tourist Trap, but I remember it was when we finished it and we wrapped it, it was such an incredible high, because I had no idea if we were going to be able to pull it off. David had never directed a feature, and I had been around Chainsaw and then sort of in the editing room or other films, and so it was. I remember I was just like really, really high when I finished it. And I guess that one never had the same notoriety as Chainsaw, but I did get a letter from Stephen King about it, and he also had on his book Dance Macabre. He mentioned it as his favorite low-budget horror film. So I said, okay, that's pretty good. I finally did what every kid who gets out of film school does and comes to Hollywood. I wanted to direct, and I directed a movie called Ghost Warrior for Empire Pictures, for Charlie Band again, and finished the film. And I said, that really isn't what I thought it was going to be like. But I enjoyed the writing process, the storytelling. I have to admit, I've done enough other stuff now that I don't get introduced all the time. Is the guy who edited the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but it was a great calling card for me, because the film had really peaked, and both Daniel and I decided that if we were ever going to come to LA, if we were ever going to come to Hollywood, that there would never be a better time to do it, and we both moved out here about the same time. I think Daniel may have moved out here a little sooner than I did. But it was great because it was a completely different town then. I digress, but it was filmmaking was a cottage industry then. It was not corporate. And you could pick up the phone and call damn near anybody and get a meet, and you call people up. I'd call people up because I was looking for editing work, and they'd say, well, what have you done? I'd say, well, I did the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And I'd say, oh, really? I want to have a meeting. So I got to meet a lot of people and get some work out of it and get some stuff going. But it was a great calling card. But it's funny, for a long time I thought probably that's what would be on my tombstone.